I recreated Vim in JavaScript. To start, since it's going to be a combination of Vim and Svelte, I will call it Swim. Why? Because Vim actually stands for VI improve, and the S in Swim stands for shitty. When we add this together, the positive cancel out the negative, and we are left with VI. Now that the name has been settled, we can start manipulating the text. First off, we need to know the structure of the text. Texts are split into lines and each line contains characters. There are many ways to represent this structure. For example, the most simplest way is to use a string array. Well, that might be fine you might say, but why do we need to talk about data structure before we start? This is because every data structure has its own pros and cons, which can drastically determine the performance of our text editor. For instance, in our earlier example, due to the fact that arrays store elements sequentially in memory, each element has a fixed size, and every time something needs to be added into the array, the elements of the array need to be shifted every single time. This can be an issue when you are working with code that are thousands of lines long. To overcome this, there are many fancy data structures that people have invented just for this case. But for now, I will just use a simple linked list, where each element have a pointer to a previous and the next node. And to represent each line, due to the nature of JavaScript strings, where the strings are immutable, which means once the string is created, it can be modified, and every time you edit a string, a new string is created. I'm going to implement a form of get buffer, which consists of splitting the original string into left and right parts. Then I will insert characters between them. Afterwards, I will create a function which builds a new string for both parts. With this, instead of creating a new string every single time, only a few strings are created. This reduces unnecessary string creation and also reduces the load on the garbage collector. At the same time, the function also allows us to implement undo redo more easily in the future. In Vim, there are primarily three modes: normal mode, insert mode, and visual mode. Normal mode is used to navigate around the text. Insert mode is used to insert text, while visual mode is used to highlight text. First, implementing normal mode. First off, we have left, right, up, down. Left, if the cursor position is less than 0, then move the cursor to the left by 1. Right, this code might look very complicated, but I actually wrote a script right after I deployed this on GitHub the other day. But in order to talk for now, it will be mentioned later. But basically what it does is check if the cursor position is less than the length of the current line, then increase the position by 1. For up and down, implementing this is as simple as increasing the line position. Wait, hold on. The reason this happens is because we didn't account for the difference in length of the lines. For example, if we are going down and the next line is less than the current line's length, we need to set the position of the cursor to the end of the next line. But this also causes a problem where the cursor position doesn't go to the initial position of the cursor before it went down. So we need to create another variable to store the initial position of the cursor, which can only be updated when the length is greater than the current cursor position. So, do you see where it starts to get complicated? Next, to move forwards and backwards, in Vim we can use the keys W, E, and GE. To implement this, I have used regex to match for the pattern in a way that closely resembles Vim, and it's not pretty. So don't expect this to be a one-to-one replica of the movement in Vim. For the third and the fourth one, it only matches words and skips every white space or symbols characters. As for our matching algorithm, what I basically done is to match the current line and store it somewhere so that the matching is only done once every single line. Afterwards, we check if there's no more in the line. If there is more, we skip to a next line and repeat once again until we reach the end of the text. For going backwards, this process is the same, but instead of going forwards, we are going backwards. Insert mode. In Vim, there's two types of insert you can do: insert before a cursor and insert after a cursor. I also made it so that whenever you enter insert mode, a buffer is created for the current line. This will be very useful later. While we are at it, I also added capital O and O to insert text above and below the current line. This is achieved by inserting a new linked list node above or below it, and also at the same time fill the node with spaces, which equals to the number of spaces in the line below it. Next, For inserting characters, this is simple because since the buffer is already created at the current line, all I need to do is to just append the string to the active zone. There's also a few characters which we will need to deal with, which includes backspace, enter, and tab. Tabs is the easiest of the bunch because all we need to do is to convert the tabs into spaces. And for enter, we split the first line into two halves. We don't touch the first half and save the second half in a variable. Then we will use the same logic as inserting a character above or below the current line. Afterward, we will reattach the first line second half into the last line by creating a buffer that has its active zone to the left. For backspace, it's going to be a little different than enter, where we have a buffer that has its mutable part on the left. This is needed so that we can remove characters from behind the cursor. For logic of it, we'll check if the cursor position is at 0. If it is, then we delete the line and append the immutable part of the first line into the upper line. For visual mode, we need to know what highlighting text actually is. First, we set the initial cursor position into a variable, and whenever you move the cursor, the position of the cursor is saved into another variable. To find the highlighted text, we need to first normalize this so that it works both ways, forwards and backwards. And for the first line, we need to check if the character is after the initial position of the cursor. Then for each subsequent line, we automatically set it to within the region, and for the last line, we check if the character position is less than the end position of the highlighted text. Now that we have the highlighted region, we can start actually implementing some features in visual mode, such as deleting text. First, create a buffer with left and right. Don't touch the left and delete the right. Then for every line within the first and the last line, delete them. Afterwards, for the last line, we are going to delete the left and push the value on the right into the first line, and then pasting the last line into the first line. Next up, swapping the cases of the text. This works the same way as deleting text, but instead of deleting the text, we are swapping the case by iterating over them one by one. For copying, it's exactly the same logic, where we iterate through every line and we save each line into a variable. Afterwards, we save the variable into the user's clipboard. And option mode is basically the combination of these three modes. For example, you want to press DW, we start visual mode first, then move forward using the function W, then we stop tracking, then we delete the text and stop tracking. And for every other function, it works basically the same way. Now lastly, for macros, this is actually pretty simple to implement. Actually, what a macro is whenever you type something into Vim, your key press is recorded into an array. And whenever you want to play back the macro, all we need to do is just iterate through a macro and pass it through the map input function that we have, and that's it. The source code is available on GitHub in the link below. Bye lol.